Hi, everyone. I am Tanya Tarr. I'm a behavioral scientist and I'm a Thinky Brain.
And I'm Katja Cahoon, psychotherapist, and I'm a Feely Brain. Welcome.
Welcome. This is Thinky Brain, Feely Brain, where we answer readers' questions and we present Thinky Brain and Feely Brain solutions. Katja, I got a really interesting question today. One reader asked, why do I feel bad about a work negotiation even though I'm qualified? Really interesting question, right?
Very good question.
Yeah, and I have a little more context to this too that might be helpful. So this person, who's a very brilliant scientist, there is a little bit of sort of history in the workplace. So she was going up for a promotion conversation and a little bit of a negotiation there. But she also told me that at the first start of her time, her 10 years there, and she's been there about 4 years, that there was a lot of kind of strife.
Mm.
And I think she never quite shed that. And I think that plays into what was going on here.
Mm.
And I also gave her some resources to help her prepare. And then we were going to have a conversation. And it was really interesting. And I'm very curious, Katja, for your take on this, because she was very avoidant. She's very avoidant of even logging on to use the resources. So yeah, so I'm going to leave the emotions to you, but I think to kick us off, I would say that when you are avoidant, it makes sense to sort of sit down. For me, what I like to do is journal. So I'll write down how I feel about the situation or like what's going
Mm.
on. I don't, and that's a very thinky / feely brain, I think. I don't know. What do you think? I feel like this is definitely a feely brain kind of thing.
Well, it seems there's a split, right? That on
Yes.
one hand, she might recognize, or a part of her might recognize that she is extremely qualified and recognize that intellectually. And then there's another part that perhaps even overrides it. And that's where the avoidance can come from, right? So we all have different parts to ourselves. We like to think that we're one holistic whole, but actually we're not, right? We have all
Yeah.
these different parts that form at different times in our life. And sometimes these parts sort of are at odds with each other. And that's what I'm hearing here. Now, without knowing more about the history, what I'm thinking, and there's a little bit perhaps of a gendered component in there because I
Oh,
hear,
definitely.
yeah, I hear these kinds of questions, and you probably as well, more from women than from men. So, one thing I'm curious about, and this could be something she can explore in journaling, is what are some messages she's been given about negotiation, about putting herself out there, about asking for something,
Right.
right? So, because in essence, she is probably going to ask or want to ask for something, whether it's a raise or promotion, right? And that can be, if you've been given certain messages growing up about be modest, be nice, don't rock the boat, right? Don't be greedy, don't be selfish, or any number of those, then asking for something can be really, really difficult.
Right.
Right. Or if you've been taught you need to be absolutely perfect before you can get something, then again, it's like, well, right. I see this with women. They come and they want to ask for a promotion, and then they have this 5-page document of why they deserve a promotion, right? Versus a guy goes in and I want this job, I want this promotion. I'm simplifying a little bit and stereotyping a little bit. But so I would say, what are some old messages that come up and that stand in the way, or old fears, even? It could be experiences. And then when there's strong fear or unpleasant emotions or experiences, one very powerful strategy is avoidance.
Right. Yeah, because they're trying to protect themselves. The other thing too,
Yeah.
we've talked about this before because I'm obsessed with self-affirmation theory. I'm into it. I've seen it used tactically to be really, really successful across the board in a lot of situations. So self-affirmation in the social psychology, as pioneered by Dr. Claude Steele, is to remember something you're authentically proud of. And so one thing I had her do that eased her into doing the preparatory stuff, right? Like helped dissolve the avoidant behavior was write down one or two or three things that she's done at this job that she's really proud of, that she had direct impact on. So whether that's, hitting a revenue goal or, successfully managing projects or things like that, like actual evidence, right? That you can point to, that you can write down, that you can talk about. That really helps us sort of feel validated, which makes us more confident, right? Because it's demonstrating competence.
Mm.
And so doing that, and also to focus on things that are as objective as possible, right? So attaching it literally to very clear, measurable outcomes. Not everyone's in a job where they can point to revenue goals, but I feel like that tends to be, or project, we got our project done 100% on time, or things like that. I think this really takes us away from the anxiety, and it did end up helping her a lot, because there was that beginning of her tenure there that she never quite shed.
Yeah, those things really can be sort of a trauma almost, and leave their mark, right? And then people carry them, especially if perhaps they haven't processed them and the emotions around it. What you're saying made me think of a neat little approach, and you might be familiar with this, Byron Katie's The Work, right? And it's sort of a really nice blend of thinky and feely brain.
Oh, nice.
So,
no, I haven't heard of this. Tell me more.
Goodness. Okay, so it's, Byron Katie has a huge body of work, no pun intended, but The Work is really a couple of questions that you can ask yourself when you're stuck or when you're in a difficult situation. And it works with beliefs, right? So for her, and this would be interesting, what's the belief behind the challenge around negotiation? I'm not good enough, I'm making this up, or I'll fail, whatever it is, right? There's some dysfunctional, maladaptive, negative belief. So the first question in The Work is this true? And this is, you've done CBT, this, is this true?
Is this true? I love that question.
Is this true?
So good.
Absolutely certain that this is true. Sometimes what I say to clients is like, okay, imagine you're in a court of law and you actually have to provide evidence to a judge or a prosecutor, right? Is this true that you're not good enough or that you're a failure? And then the next one is, what happens when you believe that? What happens? How are you feeling when you believe that? And that goes into the feeling side, right? That when we have beliefs like that, it feels shitty. Now, when I say to myself, I'm a failure, I don't feel good. I can feel my body shifting, right? And then the next question is, who would you be without that belief? And that kind of goes back to what you were just talking about, that where she has been productive, where she's had success, right? So someone who's more confident, more successful, and then reminding yourself of that.
Yeah.
Well, kind of a neat little approach.
I love all those questions. And I think the other thing, yet another thinky brain, feely brain hybrid. So in negotiation, there's this concept of the anchor, dropping an anchor. So it's the first offer that's made in a negotiation. It's called the anchor because it's very difficult to, cognitively speaking and otherwise, to dislodge the first offer. And I think that knowing when to drop an anchor or when to do the first offer in a negotiation is really important. But I always kind of throw around this idea of figuring out how to drop an emotional anchor for yourself, right? And so to kind of build on what you said, Katja, and I love all those tactics, is to sort of key off that very last question about who would you be if you shed these other beliefs that are holding you back. Like, the affirmations, writing the affirmations, saying the affirmations to yourself, especially before you walk into the negotiation, is going to adjust the emotional anchor on the situation, right? Because it affirms yourself in your most competent version of yourself. And also too, it shouldn't ever, I think the most difficult thing that women seem to face all these years that I've been studying and teaching and writing negotiation is that we very much get caught up in the idea of wanting to accommodate others. It's how we're socialized since the moment we draw breath across almost every culture, right? We are socialized to accommodate others. And so one way to shift your lens on this is, instead of accommodating, right, acquiescing, saying yes to whatever's offered to us, that you really figure out what your primary goal is, the primary outcome you want, and then make sure that that is aligned to what your negotiating partner or your boss wants. Alignment is different than accommodation because you're making sure that both goals are successful, but you can find a way to do that without giving up everything on your end.
That's a great approach. I love that. Begin with the end in mind, right? What's your goal? Because so often people start and they don't know, right? Even with simple conversations, I sometimes ask people, let's say even with their spouse, what are you hoping to get out?
Right. And then also having
a really feely brain suggestion.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So this is very feely brain. And it's actually a little bit thinky brain. So you talked about it earlier. This is protective. So you can recognize that as protective, as a part or a strategy that at some point has protected you. from failure, from hurt, or from disappointment, or judgment, or punishment, or whatever. So what I sometimes do is just say, okay, thank you. Thank you, Pat. I hear you. I appreciate you. I know you're trying to protect me, but you know what? I got this. I'm an adult now. I have strategies. And so it's rather than pushing it away or feeling bad about having that response, I befriend it and I say, okay, thank you. I hear you. And you know what? I got it. And then I use any number of these strategies.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Thanking the protective instinct. Yeah. And
Yeah,
reminding yourself you don't need it anymore. And
exactly.
also, this is a very Thinky Brain last tactic, I think, here, but there are two other things that people can do to get over sort of the feeling part that might hold you back from doing really well in that negotiation. Besides the other things we've talked about. So one thing is to take the time to map it out and to have sort of the outcome that you would like, but you always want to have at least one backup plan, right? So there's the ideal, and then there's the plan B, where you might have to give up certain things, but you make sure that you gain in other spaces. I like to make two backup plans because that's just how I roll, and that's how I rolled for a really long time. I think more than two is excessive, but and it's not so much a backup plan; it's an anticipation of how things might go. Because when you anticipate it, that takes the anxiety and the emotion out of it. You're prepared, so you know what your next move is. But the other big thing is you've got to rehearse. So practice with yourself, record with your phone, record with your laptop, recruit a friend to play the role of whomever you're negotiating with. It seems so simple. There's so many cheap or free ways to do it. People very rarely avail themselves of this, and rehearsal can really squash that anxiety, and make the whole process move really much more smoothly for you. So
I literally wrote down rehearse with a friend in my notes. So yes, absolutely. Because it's so powerful to do that. I even sometimes in therapy do a certain replays with an empty chair, just picturing someone there. And even that is incredibly powerful, right? So yeah, yes to rehearsal.
yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, thanks, Feely Brain.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Brain. I appreciate you.